Hey everyone, thank you for joining me for today's video, which is, I think, all our favorite monthly video, and that is doing our TBR. This time it's going to be for the month of September. We are headed into fall, which I am super excited about. It is my favorite season, and I am ready to get into the fall weather so much. I am so excited to see what is going to end up on my TBR this month, especially hoping that they'll fit into some of my TBR games so that I can, finish my monthly TBR. That would be a nice change of pace. But we'll see what happens. We'll see how the board is going to treat us this month. All right, so let's get started. First off, let's quickly go through the August TBR, see how I did. Caveat is I am recording this about a week early, so I still have 7 days to complete it. We'll see what you think my chances are after I go through the books that I've read. All right, so first up, we had to find a book with a person on the cover. I will be reading Until the Celebration for this prompt. It's a short book. I know I can get this done by the end of September, so this will be completed. Next up, we had to read a book that was set in Europe, and I am currently reading How to Solve Your Own Murder, which will be completed by the end of this month as well. Then we had to read a book that had a cover with no more than 3 colors. I did read The Reckoning, which is the third book in the Zodiac Academy series, so complete. We had to read a book with fire or flame on the cover. I did read The Dagger and the Flame. Next up, we had to read a book in a trilogy or duology. I am currently reading The Atlas Paradox. Hopefully I will have that done by the end of September. We had a book featuring a king and or queen. I have not read either of these. Most likely will not get to them by the end of August. Did I say September last time? I think I did. I mean August. I'm already in fall. Then we had our series prompt, which again was to read the next book in the series of the School of Good and Evil. Did not do that. And we had to read a graphic or manga novel. And I did read Spill Zone for this prompt. And then for our jar pulls, I had to read The Murder on the Links, which is the second book in the Hercule Poirot series. I plan to read this by the end of this month. We'll see if I'm successful. From our new release jar, we had to read The Lost Story and One Perfect Couple. I only read One Perfect Couple. And then, we also had An Education in Malice, which I did not read. His Majesty's Dragon from our science fiction fantasy jar, did not read. And then from our series jar, we had Kiss of Frost, which I did read. So in conclusion, I have not completed the TBR and probably won't by the end of August. And I also have not read 2/3 of the books, which means we neither get a punishment or reward if I read 2/3. I highly doubt that that will happen by the end of the month. Not 100% sure, so we're going to go ahead and assume I did not. And the next punishment is just to pull 2 books for the first 3 jar pulls. So it's not like a terrible punishment, it just adds some additional books to the TBR. But February, oh my gosh, I don't even know where my head is. September is where I really get into my reading season. So I'm hopeful, even if we have a big TBR this month, that I will be able to get at least 2/3 done, if not the entire TBR. So we'll see. So I think it's time to begin the game. This will be the last month we'll be using our hot air balloon board. So for those who are new to my channel, for these transition months where we're moving from one season to another, the board I use is whatever season we're starting off in. So since fall doesn't start till the end of September, technically, we will be using the summer game board, and next month, we will pull out our fall one. All right, so let's bring up the game board and go ahead and do our first roll. All right, here's our game board for September. Our tokens are already on board. The only ones that really concern me is this boarding pass here at the end of the board, and then we have 2 boarding passes up near the top of the board that are close together. So hopefully we can get through without landing on either of those. Let's start with our first roll with our 8-sided die. And it's a 6. And blue. All right, starting off pretty strong. We rolled a 6 and we landed on blue. So let's grab our blue bag and see what our first prompt of the game for September is going to be. This bag is again my favorite bag for this game because it contains all our prompts that change each month. So all our seasonal prompts. So the way I do this on transitional months is that our seasonal prompt is still going to be summer, since technically, like I said, fall doesn't start until the end of September. But to get some fall prompts in here, we'll be using the monthly prompts for September that includes some fall inspired prompts. So it's like the best of both worlds. I can get some summer books just to kind of finish off the summer, and then some fall books once we start transitioning into that fall weather. Also in here are our two astrological signs, which are Virgo and Libra for the month of September. All right, let me mix these up real quick. All right, so let's go ahead. We're going to split the deck here. This will be our first prompt for September. And it looks like an astrological sign prompt. And it is a book set at a private boarding school. What a perfect prompt for the month of September. I couldn't ask for anything better. So let me look at our physical book options and I will be right back. So since this prompt doesn't specify that this has to be a book set at a private high school boarding school, we're going to stretch it a little bit and move up into the college age universities. And we're going to go with a book called Dark Fae by Suzanne Valenti and Caroline Peckham, who are the authors of the Zodiac Academy. The reason we're going to go to this book instead of the fourth book in the Zodiac Academy was when I was looking to see what the best way to read the books in the Zodiac universe are. It recommended reading the first 3 books in the Zodiac Academy and then jumping to this series, which takes place 5 years before the Zodiac Academy. And this is the first book in the series that I am blanking on the name, but it is called Dark Fae. So this series takes place 5 years before the Zodiac Academy series. And this is the first book in the series, and it is set in the Aurora Academy. It follows Elise Callisto, who is a vampire, and in this book, she is on a mission to destroy whoever murdered her brother. So I am excited to see how this series goes. I've read that people really enjoy this series a little bit more than the Zodiac Academy as far as the writing and everything, so we'll find out if that is true. But that will be the first book on our TBR, Dark Fae by Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. Now let me see if I have a electronic book option for this prompt as well. I'm not sure if I do, but I'll be right back after I check. Since we decided to include college in the prompt, I did find one book that we can use for this prompt. It is a nonfiction book and it is called That Book About Harvard. So this book is by Eric Kester and is a memoir of his first year in college at Harvard and kind of talks about how he was scared about how he was going to fit in, and it also goes over kind of the craziest year that he ever had at this university. So it's supposed to be kind of like a hilarious, heartwarming memoir. So we'll put that onto our TBR, though you probably know that I'm most likely going to choose the Dark Fae option for this prompt. All right, let's bring up the game board and go ahead and do our second roll of the game. All right, on to roll number 2. That's a 2. And that's our yearly TBR jar. All right, this roll wasn't as good. We only rolled a 2 and we landed on our yearly TBR jar. So let's pull that jar up and choose our books. All right, so here's our yearly TBR jar. In here are my 25 books to read in 2025. As our punishment, we have to pull 2 books from the first 3 jars. So we'll be pulling 2 out of here. So let's see what they are. This is good because with only 4 months left in the year, I really need to catch up on this particular reading challenge. All right, book number 1 is Happy Place. All right, I'm actually really happy for this because I was planning on reading this in September since it's really the last month that we're going to get this hot, warm summer weather. So this will be the perfect book to read in the beginning of the month. So this is a romance book about a group of friends who always go on this summer vacation together. Only this time, 2 of the friends have broken up and they've kept it a secret from their other friends. So they end up going on this vacation, pretending to still be together, and we'll kind of see what happens from there. All right, let's see what our second book is. So hopefully that will be a nice, quick summer read. All right, book number 2 is going to be... I don't know if that focused, but I'll put it up here. It's called Whose Body by Dorothy L. Sayers. So this is kind of a classic mystery series. The first book in her series called Lord Peter Wimsey, and it is short. It's only 212 pages, so that is perfect. Kind of in the same vein as the Agatha Christie series. So the mystery to solve in this book is that a body was found lying in the tub, and Lord Peter Wimsey, who kind of dabbles in mystery solving as a hobby, knew that this was not a natural murder. And so, in this, his first murder case, he untangles the ghastly mystery of the corpse in the bath. So, we will add this one to our TBR as well. So, I think those were two great choices. We have our last kind of summer romance read for the summer, and then we have a nice classic mystery that is short. What more could we ask for? All right, let's bring up the game board for roll number 3. Hopefully we get a bigger number than 2. All right, roll number 3 is a 1. And that's yellow. There is only one number that was less than 2, and that is 1. How did we do that? So we rolled a 1, but we landed on the yellow bag. So let's grab that bag and see what our next prompt for the game is. All right, so in this stack of prompts, we have title prompts, miscellaneous prompts, and then some series prompts where we just read the next book in the series. So let's mix these up. Hopefully we get a good one. All right, this will be our prompt here. It looks like it's a title prompt. And it is a book that has a number in the title. So this shouldn't be too difficult to find. So let me take a look and we'll see what book we're going to go with. All right, we are going to go with One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig for this prompt. 1 being the number, because as we are going into fall, this will be a good book to get us into that mood, that fall mood, and that atmosphere. So this book follows Elspeth, who has a kind of monster trapped in her head known as the Nightmare, but he kind of protects her, he keeps her secrets. But one day she meets a mysterious highwayman, and her life takes this kind of drastic turn, and now she's thrust into this world of shadows and deception, and ends up joining a dangerous quest to cure Blunder, which is the kingdom that she lives in, of the dark magic infecting it. So I'm excited for this because we're getting into that kind of fall vibe, but this also fits one of the Reddit challenges, prompts, I guess, the Reddit bingo prompts, because it has 1 in dark in the title. So it meets the hardcore prompt for whatever that prompt is where you have to use common words in the title. So that is perfect. We're going to get a bingo, Reddit bingo prompt off, and we're going to get ourselves into the fall mood. So that will be our physical book option. Let me look at our Kindle books and see if we have any options over there. All right, so I did find 2 options with titles with numbers in them. The first is The 100 by Cass Morgan. This is a dystopian book. There was a TV show that was based on it, but basically, after this nuclear war, humans have been living up in these spaceships, but now they are kind of unable to sustain the life that is up there, so they need to find a way to decrease the number of lives that are living aboard the spaceship. So what they end up doing is sending these children who have been accused of various crimes down onto Earth to see, basically to see if it's safe and if anyone can survive down there. So it follows the journey of these children and teenagers being stranded now on Earth and how they survive. All right, then we have 6 Years by Harlan Coben. So this book follows Jake Fisher, who was divorced from his wife Natalie about 6 years ago, but is still in love with her. But he kept his promise of leaving her alone while she starts this new life with her new husband, Todd. But when Todd dies, he can't keep himself away from his funeral, so he ends up going there and finds out that Todd's wife is actually not Natalie. And he's found out that this wife has been married to Todd for 2 decades. And as he starts to kind of figure out what is going on, his memories of Natalie kind of start to unravel. And as he continues to search, his life becomes at risk. And it dawns on him that the man that he has become may actually be based on a carefully constructed fiction. All right, so those are our 2 options. I think I'm going to go with 6 Years by Harlan Coben because I usually don't get a ton of mystery thrillers on here. Most likely I am going to read One Dark Window, but this will give me a mystery thriller option if I'm in that mood. We have to be strategic in our book picks this month so that we can complete this TBR. All right, let's bring up the game board and go ahead and do roll number 4. All right, roll number 4 is a 4. And that's another blue. All right, so roll number 4, we rolled a 4, but we landed on blue. So let's grab that bag, which has all the good prompts in it. And let's mix these up. These have our summer, September, Virgo, and Libra prompts in here. So let's mix them up good and see what our prompt is going to be. All right, here we go. Let's split the deck right there. And this will be our prompt. Looks like it's a Virgo prompt. There we go. All right, gray, beige, or pale yellow on the cover. All right, let's see if we have any books in those colors. So like I said before, we're gonna try to get some nice books on this TBR that give me a good chance of completing it. So we are going with a middle grade book for this prompt. It is called The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. And this is beige on the cover, I feel, like this floor. So we're gonna go with it for this prompt. And this book, the plot of this book is kind of like a mystery book where 16 people have to gather for the reading of a very strange will of the very rich Samuel W. Weston. And to their surprise, it turns out that the will is going to be a contest challenging the heirs to find out who among them is Westing's murderer. And on top of that, the winner may become a millionaire. So that is a book we're going to go with. Just a very quick, very short book that is less than 200 pages long. For this prompt. All right, so let me take a look at our electronic book choices and see if there's any options on there. All right, so I found 3 options. First up is The Far Time Incident by Neve Maslakovich, which is book 1 of the Incident series, and it has a pale yellow beige cover. And this is kind of a science fiction book where someone is found in a professor's time travel lab. There was a deadly accident, and now they have to figure out what happened. And they end up at Pompeii during the time of the deadly explosion. So that could be interesting. Then we have Inker and Crown, which is by Megan O. Russell in book 1 of the Guild of Ilbria series. So this is a fantasy series where the main character has to find the secrets of the guilds, and he's joined on this quest by a bunch of other members. So that's kind of our fantasy quest option. And last up, we have The Liar's Dictionary by Eli Williams. And this book is set in kind of 2 timelines. The first timeline is a Victorian timeline where Peter Wentworth, who is a lexicographer, has started to insert unauthorized fictionist entries into the dictionary in an attempt to kind of have some sense of a individual purpose. And then in the present day, Mallory is tasked with uncovering these fake false entries before the work is digitized. So those are our 3 options. Of these 3, I think I'm going to go with the Far Time Incident, get a good science fiction time traveling mystery on here. And it also takes place during the time of Pompeii, so that could be a interesting twist. So that will be our electronic book choice for our gray, beige, or pale yellow on the cover. All right, let's move on to roll number 5. See where we end up. Roll number 5 is a 5. And that's also a blue. All right, we rolled a 4 for roll 4. Now we're rolling a 5 for roll 5, but we ended up on blue again, which means we get to choose another prompt from this deck here. So let's mix these up and see what we're going to end up with. All right. Let's split the deck. Well, split near the back for once. Let's go with this prompt here. Oh, we got a summer prompt. All right, there we go. I think that's good. All right, a middle grade or a YA book. Perfect. We need more of these on this TBR. This TBR is shaping up like a possibility that I may end up finishing it. Let me take a look and see what middle grade or YA book we're going to go with. All right, we are going to go with The Gray King by Suzanne Cooper, which is the, I believe, fourth book in the Dark is Rising sequence, which is a fantasy series that was written back in the 1970s. They're nice and short books, so they don't take too long to read, which is great. The books are based around the fight between good and evil, kind of like your classic fantasy fight. And they focus on kind of two groups of children. It focuses on a group of siblings as well as a young boy who is what is it, the seventh son of the seventh son, or the ninth son of the ninth son. I can never remember which. So it kind of focuses on these two different families. And each book, there is a different quest that either the siblings or the boy named Will has to solve. This book looks like it follows Will as he is recuperating from a severe illness in North Wales, and he has a quest that he has to go on. So I'm excited for this one. I'm really enjoying rereading the series, and I'm excited to see what happens in this book. So this will be our middle grade book for our physical option, and then let me see what options we have for our electronic books. All right, we're going to go with The Quest for Glory, which is the fourth book in the School of Good and Evil series. As it's the fourth book in this series, it's hard to kind of explain what this particular book is about without ruining everything that happened in the first several books. But basically, the series follows two girls who grew up in this little town that was outside the woods of kind of like fairy tale land. And every so many years, two children from this town are chosen to go to school at the School for Good and Evil, where they learn how to be either the villains in the story or the kind of princesses, you know, the good in the stories. And this follows the two girls that are taken from their town and end up going to the School of Good and Evil, and it follows their journey through this magical land. That will be our electronic book option for this prompt. All right, I'm liking how this is setting up for the fall. We have some good summer reads in here, and then some reads that will help us transition into that fall weather. So let's go ahead and bring up the game board and see where we are going on roll number 6. All right, roll number 6 is a 7. And that is our time for vacation token, which means we move backwards to the next time for vacation token, which thankfully is not that far. And anytime we move backwards, we get to upgrade to the next size dice. All right, we rolled a 7. We did land on a time for vacation token. It could have been worse because we only had to move back like not that many spaces. But the good thing about this is that we get to move up in our dice size. So we'll be moving up to a 12-sided dice, which will help us get through the board a lot quicker. So there is some good about landing on these tokens. But anytime we land on either a boarding pass or the time for vacation token, we get to choose from our series jar. And since it's our second jar pull, we will be choosing 2 books from it. All right, this is our series jar. It has the next books in 37 series that I am prioritizing that are in this jar. There are books from middle grade all the way up to high fantasy. So we are going to put in our thoughts middle grade series, short book series, because that is what we need to finish this TBR. All right, let's mix these up and choose our first one. All right, let's go with this one here. Hopefully it's a good one. I don't know. All right, here we go. Can't even open it. That's fine. Where is how? Oh. Okay. Oh, so this is Veiled Vengeance. These don't usually show up. I'll put it up here. This is a cozy mystery series, and the books are so quick to read. I am very, very happy with this jar pull. So this series is by Stella Bixby, and this is book 3 in the series. It's called the Shayla Murphy series, and it follows Shayla Murphy. and she is an American who fell in love with I believe it was a Scottish or an Irish person rather, Irish person, and she ends up going to meet his family, and then a person is found murdered, and she ends up helping solve the case because of the background of what she does in the States, which I can't remember if she's a detective. She has something to do with like solving mysteries back in the US. So in this book, there is a wedding that is being planned, but the wedding happened to be double booked, and one of the brides is found in a deadly position. And so now she has to figure out who the murderer is because she is being not accused, but people are thinking that she may have had something to do with it. So I'm excited for this. Like I said, these books are so short, such quick reads. It's a cozy mystery as we're going into the fall weather. This takes place in June, but that's okay. And yeah, I that was a good pick. All right, hopefully our second pick is just as good. All right, let's see. I'm always so nervous about this one because there's some really long books in here. All right. This is our pick. Here we go. All right. The jar has been so nice. This is the Arctic Incidents, which is a Artemis Fowl series book, and it's the second book in the series. It's a middle grade series, again, which means quick reads. The jar could not have been nicer. Like I said, this book is called The Arctic Incidents. It's the second book in the Artemis Fowl series, and it follows Artemis Fowl, who it's kind of a fantasy book that is set in a world where there are goblins, and this book follows Artemis as he searches for his father. And it takes him up into the Arctic, hence the name The Arctic Incident. All right, we got two books that are going to be quick reads. Let's go ahead, bring up the game board, see what we get for roll number 7. All right, we are moving up to the 10-sided die. And we got a 10. And we hit the same time for vacation token. But we get to move up to the 20-sided die, so there is some good in that. What is going on? How do we roll the only number that lands us on the time for vacation, the same time for vacation token again, and now we have to move back what is apparently 10 spaces since we rolled a 10. And we're going to have to pull 2 more books out of our series jar. Hopefully it's going to be just as nice as it was the first time around. I already put it back. I shouldn't have done that. Let me grab it. All right. We still have some middle grade options in here. We still have some quick read options in here. Let's hope for the best. All right. Let's see. All right. So this is our first book. This will be the last time that we have to choose 2 books out of the jar, though. So that's something. All right. Not too bad. We got a Agatha Christie book. This is called The Body in the Library. It's the second book in the Miss Marple series. And these are pretty short books as well, pretty quick reads, so not too bad. I think I said earlier we don't get a lot of mystery books onto this, but this game is like, yeah, you said that. We're going to get all the mystery books on here now. So this is book 2 in the Miss Marple series by Agatha Christie, and the mystery that needs to be solved in this book is that there is a young woman that is found in the library of the Bantries, and the Bantries end up inviting Miss Marple to solve the case. So that is the mystery we'll be solving in this book. So perfect. Let's go ahead and do our second jar pull. All right, one more. Please be nice to us. All right. All right, we'll go with this one here. Percy Jackson! Yes, another middle grade book. I am so happy and so thankful. So this book is The Chalice of the Gods. I believe it's book 6 in the Percy Jackson series. Let me take a look real quick. I believe it is book 6. It's telling me that it's book 1 in the senior year adventures of Percy Jackson. But basically this is a series by Rick Riordan that follows Percy Jackson, who is a demigod whose father is one of the Greek gods. It's set in the US, but in a US where the Greek gods, the Norse gods, etc., all truly exist and interact with the lives of humans. So the first several books were set when Percy Jackson was younger. Now he's in high school and he has been set 3 quests that he must complete before he is allowed to go to the New Rome University. And he needs to complete these 3 quests because he needs the 3 recommendation letters for Mount Olympus. So that sounds like it should be a fun book to read. And it's another, like I said, it's another middle grade series. It looks like it's only 288 pages, so not super long. So that is perfect. Our series jar, once again, was being super nice to us. All right, let's move on to roll number 8. All right, roll number 8 is a 4. And that is our boarding pass, which means we're moving back to the beginning of the board. How did we hit the boarding pass now? 2 time for vacation tokens and now the boarding pass. And now we have to go back all the way to the beginning of the board and pull yet another book out of our series jar. I'm just going to focus on now we'll be using a 20-sided die, so hopefully we can just zip around the board and complete this game. We got to think on the positive side of things, right? All right, this time we only have to pull 1 book. I just don't have a great feeling about this. All right. This jar just needs to be nice to us. Again, come on, you can do it. Hopefully the last time for this game. I don't know which one to choose. There's so much pressure. All right, we're going to go with this one here. All right, hopefully this was a good one. All right, this wasn't the best jar pull ever. It's the second book in the Six Tudor Queen series, which is a historical fiction series that is set during the reign of Henry VIII and follows his 6 wives. This book follows Anne Boleyn. It's called Anne Boleyn. I can't say that last name. It's called Anne Boleyn, A King's Obsession. And the book follows her relationship with King Henry VIII as the second queen of King Henry, the second wife of King Henry. All right, it's 544 pages, so it could be worse, but that's a little bit of a longer book on our TBR. So hopefully we can get to that and get it read this month. I do enjoy the series, I will say. It's a really well-written series. At least, well, I did enjoy the first book, the only book I read of the series. It was really well-written, and I did learn a lot about this time period. So I'm definitely looking forward to the second one, but it is long. It is long, and it is kind of like a dense story. So it's going to take many days to read it, but like I said, I do enjoy the stories. All right, let's move on to roll number 9, now using our 20-sided die. All right, we need some really big numbers here for roll number 9. Another 4. Yellow. Well, the 20-sided die didn't really help us. We only rolled a 4, but we did land on yellow, so let's grab that bag and choose another prompt. All right, so these are our title prompts, miscellaneous prompts, and series prompts. If we have 5 books from the series jar, some of which we have cards for in this deck, if we draw one of those cards, it would be awesome because we would only have to read 1 book to fulfill 2 rolls. So let's hope for that. That would be amazing. Will that happen? Probably not, but one can always hope. All right, let's go with this one here. It's a miscellaneous prompt. And it is a mood read, basically a free choice. That is perfect. All right, I'm going to throw on The Magician's Guild, which is book 1 in the Black Magician Trilogy book by Trudy Canavan. I read these books a very long time ago. I don't remember quite what they were about, but I'm pretty sure I enjoy them. It's a trilogy. Well, I said that it's a Black Magician trilogy. This is obviously book 1, and this book follows a young girl who possesses a raw power beyond imagining, and she is a untrained mage who now must be found and schooled before she destroys herself in the city with a force she cannot yet control. So we got school, we got magic. Definitely a book that I am looking forward to read. And also, one of the prompts for one of my yearly challenges. I think it's the 52 books in 52 weeks. You need to read a book with a magician in it. So, what better book to read than The Magician's Guild? So that will be our physical book option. And then for our electronic book option, I'm going with a book off of my 25 books to read in 2025 list. It's Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. It's also on the shorter side, only 243 pages. And this book follows Mara, who is the third born daughter of a family, and she has seen her older sisters kind of being abused at the hands of the prince. She ends up seeking help from a powerful grave witch who offers her the tools to kill the prince if she can complete 3 impossible tasks. So on this quest, she's joined again by a bunch of different people, including a reluctant fairy godmother, a former knight, and a chicken possessed by a demon. And together they intend to be the hand that closes around the throat of the prince and frees Mara's family and their kingdom from its tyrannous ruler. So that will be our physical book, or not our physical, that will be our electronic book option. I'm excited for both of these, so I don't know which one I'll end up going with. I think it's going to come down to how much time I have to read all these books. All right, let's move on to rule number 10. Rule number 10 is 20. I like that, hopefully. We'll find out when we see where we land. Yellow. All right, that is much more like it. We rolled a 20. This may be the first time I have ever rolled a 20 in this game. I'm not too sure, but I am very happy about that. That gets us over halfway through the board in one roll, which is amazing. And we landed on yellow, which we just did. So let's grab these prompt cards and see what we get for our next prompt. Again, these prompt cards have title prompts, miscellaneous prompts, and some series prompts. So let's see what we get. All right, let's split the deck there. This will be our prompt, and it is a title prompt that says a nature word in the title. All right, well, that's fun. So anything like trees, flowers, mountains, water, fire, maybe? So let me see what I have on our physical book and see what we can do with this prompt. I found 2 options. We have The Plant Hunter by T.L. Mogford, plant being a word of nature. And we have A River of Golden Bones, river being nature. This is book 1 in the Golden Court series by A.K. Mulford. This is a fantasy book. This one is I don't know. I think it's more of like a historical fiction book, is my guess. So, The Plant Hunter is set back in 1867, and back in Victorian times where the obsession was among rare and exotic flora. And there's this group of plant hunters who take these daring adventures. They're sent into uncharted lands in search of untold wonders in the form of plants. And this book follows Harry, who is not a plant hunter, but he's inherited a specimen of this fabled tree as well as a map. And he sees this as his time to seize his chance at fame and fortune. So, Quest for a Plant, that is this one. Then we have A River of Golden Bones, which is a fantasy book. So, this book follows twins Calla and Briar, who are actually wolves, but are hiding amongst regular humans to hide from the powerful sorceress who destroyed their kingdom. The only one that knows who they are is Prince Gray, who is also Briar's betrothed and a childhood friend of them. So it comes time for the twins to travel outside of their hiding so that Briar can get wed. And of course, all their plans go awry. The evil sorceress is back, and she has one last sleeping curse for the last heir to the Golden Court. So Calla has to step out of the shadow to save her sister, their kingdom, and their legacy. That's what this book is about. So out of these two options, I think I'm going to go with A River of Golden Bones. I've had this book on my TBR before and haven't gotten around to it. I've owned this book for a while. I know book 2 is already out. I don't know if this is a duology or if it's going to be longer, but I feel like it's about time that I actually sit down and read this book. So we'll add this one to our TBR. All right, electronic book. Let me take a quick peek. All right, so for this book, we're going to go with The Astronaut and the Star by Jen Comfort, which is a romance book. Our nature word is star. That's in nature, it's up in the sky. And this book follows Reggie, who dreams of being the first astronaut, or the first woman astronaut to land on the moon. So Reggie has a PR disaster, and to kind of rehabilitate her reputation after this disaster, she has to take on a Hollywood actor, John, and train him as a astronaut for, I assume, a future role. So John is super excited about this personal space camp. He loves space. This is kind of like his dream come true. That is until he meets what is termed in the synopsis as ice cold Reggie. Despite the two being polar opposites, there is some attraction between them, and John has decided to convince Reggie that there is a future between them. Then things go awry, and Reggie is faced with a possible future without John, and now she kind of has to rethink her relationship with him, which is currently a friendship, but does she want more? So that is the gist of the story. So that is the book that we'll be going with for our electronic book version. We don't have a lot of romance books on here, so this is perfect. Again, it's The Astronaut and the Star by Jen Comfort. All right, let's move on to roll number 11. All right, roll number 11 is a 9. And that is blue. All right, we are so close to the end of the board. This could be ended in one more roll. We're going to cross our fingers, but for this round, we did roll a 9. We landed on blue, which will hopefully be our last prompt pull of the game, and I'm super happy it's coming out of my favorite bag that has our summer, September, Virgo, and Libra prompts in it. So hopefully we can get a good, what will hopefully be our final prompt of the game. We'll see. If we roll a 1 or a 2, this will not be our final one. All right. Let's split the deck right there. This is going to be our prompt. Is that a September prompt? So that's fun. There we go. All right. We have a cover with red, orange, or yellow, so our fall colors. So that's exciting. The book I'm going to go with for this prompt is Running with the Demon by Terry Brooks. This is book 1 in the Word in the Void series. It's a fantasy, kind of like maybe like an urban fantasy series that follows two people, John Ross, who has been plagued by these nightmares that tell him that something evil is going to happen real soon. So he ends up being drawn to the sleepy town of Hopewell, Illinois. In Hopewell, there is this 14-year-old Ness Freemark who also has been sensing that something terrible is going to happen, but she hasn't really learned to wield this budding power that sets her apart from her friends. And now the future of humanity depends on a man haunted by his dreams and on a gifted young girl who will discover what survives when hope and innocence are shattered forever. So this is also the first book in chronological order in Terry Brooks' Shannara universe. Wow, I'm having a lot of trouble saying that. And that's the other reason I want to get this onto my TBR so that I can get started in this universe, because I feel like it'll be a good universe to read during the fall, winter months. So this will be our physical book choice for the prompt. Let me take a look at our electronic book board and see what options we have over there. All right, so the book I'm going to go with for the electronic book choice is called The Protection of Wren Crown. It's by Anne Zoel, and it's the second book in her Wren Crown series, which is a fantasy series that the first book at least was set at a magical university. And the second book looks like it also takes part in this magical university. So this book follows Wren Crown, who in the first book had no idea that magic existed until her twin brother basically was murdered by this kind of group of magical assassins, I think. And she is visited by someone who works at this magical university and is told that she also has magical powers and that she needs to come to the university to train them. Her powers happen to be pretty powerful, and the bad guys are starting to kind of come after her as well now. This universe is set in kind of like layers. The first layer of the universe is the world without magic, and then only people who have magical powers are able to go to the second layer where this university is set. So now, with more magical warfare going on between the different magical factions, she is up to her to kind of protect her family and to protect her university. So that's where the second book comes into play. So that, and you can see there is and you can see there's yellow on the cover, so it fits the prompt. All right, so let's bring up the game board for our 12th roll. Hopefully our final roll if we get anything higher than a 2, but who knows? Let's see what we get. And what could be our final roll of the game? Roll number 12 is a 11, which means we have completed the game in 12 rolls. All right, we got a 11, which means we have come to the conclusion of the game on the 11th on the 12th roll. So all that's left is to grab our science fiction fantasy award-winning / nominee jar and choose our last book for the month of September. All right, so in this jar, there are 70 books that are either award-winning or nominees for the Hugo Award, the Nebula Award, the Locus Award, and the Golden Duck Awards. So books in here range anywhere from middle grade all the way up to adult. So let's see what our final book for the month of September is. All right, here we go. Our last book. Hopefully it's not a epic fantasy because I really want to finish this TBR. I think we set it up well. We'll see. All right, here we go. Our final book of September is going to be Old Man's War by John Scalzi, which is the first book in his Old Man War series. So in this world, this future world, everyone knows that when you reach retirement age, you can join the Colonial Defense Force because they don't want young people. They want people who have the knowledge and skills of decades of living. People who join are taken off the earth, never allowed to return. You'll serve 2 years at the front, and then if you survive, you're given a generous homestead of your own on one of the hard-won colonial planets. And John Perry has decided to take that deal, so we're going to find out what happens to him on this journey of a lifetime. So this book won the Hugo Award and the Locus Award. So that completes our September TBR. Let's run through it real quickly, starting with the prompt draws. All right, we had 7 prompt draws, which are right here. It never looks too bad when we're just looking at the physical book stack. All right, so first up, we had to read a book that had red, orange, or yellow on the cover, and we have Running with a Demon by Terry Brooks, the first book in the Shannara Universe series. And we have The Protection of Ren Crown by Anne Zoll, which is the second book in the Ren Crown series. I'm not sure which one I'm going to read. It'll probably end up if either of them fit one of my prompts when I do my September reading challenge games. Next up, we had a mood read, and we went with The Magician's Guild, Book 1 in the Black Magician Trilogy by Trudy Canavan, and Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. Again, probably will depend on if I can fit any of these into my September reading games, but if not, I may read Nettle and Bone just because it is a 25 books in my 2025 list. Then we had to read a middle grade or young adult book. We have The Gray King by Susan Cooper, which is the 4th book in her The Dark is Rising sequence. And we have Quest for Glory, which is the 4th book in the Skull and Good and Evil series. I'll probably read The Gray Queen. I'll probably read The Gray King because it's a much shorter read. Then we had to read a book that had gray, beige, or pale yellow on the cover. We have The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin and The Fartime Incidents by Neve Maslakovich. We'll probably go with The Westing Game. It's a nice little cozy mystery plus again, it's a lot shorter. Next up, we had to read a book with a number in the title. We have One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig and 6 Years by Harlan Coben. I'll probably read One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I've been wanting to read this for a while, I just haven't gotten around to it. Then we had to read a book with a nature word in the title. We have A River of Golden Bones, the first book in the Golden Court series by A.K. Mulford. And we have The Astronaut in the Star by Jen Comfort. This is probably going to come down to if I'm in a fantasy or a romance mood. I'm leaning towards A River of Golden Bones, though. And then our last prompt draw was a book set at a private boarding school. And we have Dark Fae by Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti, which is a book in the Zodiac universe. And then we have The Book About Harvard by Eric Kester, which is a nonfiction book. I'll be reading Dark Fae. I'm enjoying this series, enjoying binge reading these books, so that's the one I'm going to go with. All right, on to our jar pulls, of which we have 8. So for our 25 books in 2025 jar, we pulled Whose Body by Dorothy L. Sayers, which is the first book in a Lord Peter Wimsey series, so a cozy mystery. And we have Happy Place by Emily Henry, a nice summer romance to end the summer with. For our series jar, we have Veiled Vengeance by Stella Bixby, the third book in the Shayla Murphy series, a nice cozy mystery book that's easy to read. Then we have The Arctic Incidents, the second book in the Artemis Fowl series by Owen Colfer, a nice middle grade fantasy series. Then we have Anne Boleyn, A King's Obsession, the second book in the Six Tudors Queen series, which is a longish historical fiction book. We have The Body in the Library, which is the second book in the Miss Marple series by Agatha Christie, quick mystery read. And then last but not least, we have Percy Jackson and the Chalice of the Gods, which is the sixth book in the Percy Jackson series. So another nice middle grade fantasy book. So those are our books. Is this doable? We have 15 books to read. It's all going to come down to if I can fit these books in any of my reading challenge games this month. So let's go over those first. So videos coming out in September. There's going to be 3 of them. First up, we're going to be doing the double prompt reading challenge, where I'm going to pull 2 prompts from 2 different yearly reading challenges I have going on, like Reddit Fantasy Bingo and the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do. And I have to find one book that matches both of those prompts, so we'll kind of see how that goes. We're also going to be doing our Gilmore Girls reading challenge game, where all our prompts are based on characters and episodes in the Gilmore Girls. This game will be based on the first half of season 2, so I'm super excited about that. And our last game for September is going to be based on tropes. We are going to be spinning a trope wheel with, a lot of common tropes, and then we're going to have to choose a fall book based on that trope. So those are the videos we have coming out in September that I'm super excited about. Hopefully we'll get some of these books on here for those videos. That gives me a much higher chance of completing this TBR. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoy playing these games. Let me know what's on your September TBR in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. If you want to see future videos by me, including my future monthly TBR or any of my reading game challenges I do throughout the month, please hit that subscribe button. If you want to let me know you've watched this video all the way through, why don't we comment a Ferris wheel emoji in the comments below? Because for running with the demon that has a nice little Ferris wheel on the cover, we'll go with that one for this month. And yeah, thank you again for joining me for this video. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye.